Mic off. Talking about reasons why people don't obey the gospel. We started off looking at bad information, and part of 2 Peter and Hebrews 3 could probably be put, especially 2 Peter, could be put under the category of just getting bad information. Because if we go and look at 2 Peter here, let's run over there real quick and look at that, and then I want to jump back to Hebrews. But in 2 Peter chapter 2, we could really begin reading in verse 1. There's a lot of information here, but it's dealing with being moved away from Christ, being moved away from what you know, what you're comfortable with, what you learned, what you've been taught, but something is moving you away from that. And that's why it would have been good if I'd included this in the section of being inadequate information. I've included it in the section of sin being the main thing that moves people away from Christ, is just the allurement and the attraction of sin. And that easily moves us away from godly things. And that's a lot of what's happening in 2 Peter, and that's why the writer is writing to the brethren here, because they're being moved away from God for a number of different reasons. So let's take a look at verse 1. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 1. But false prophets also arose among the people, just as there will also be false teachers among you, who will secretly introduce the destructive heresies, even denying the master who bought them, bringing swift destruction upon themselves. So here, the situation that we see that's happening is people have gotten to the point where there is so much false teaching that they're even denying Christ. Not only are they not bringing people to Christ, they're denying Christ and who He is. Verse 2, many will follow their sensuality. These are the ways that they're pulling people away from Jesus. Follow their sensuality, and because of them, the way of truth will be maligned. In their greed, they will exploit you with false words. What does it mean when it's saying false words? That's lying, right? That's just lying. So they're gonna lie to you. They're not going to tell you the truth, and they're going to move you away with false words. Their judgment from long ago is not idle. What's the writer saying here? Their judgment from long ago is not idle. There's another passage that kind of references this thought too. Anybody want to stab at that? Their judgment from long ago is not idle, and their destruction is what? What's it say about their destruction? Doesn't sleep. What's that mean? What do you think that's talking about? Their judgment from long ago is not idle, and their destruction is not asleep. What's he saying? I'm sorry? Evil is ever present. What else? I forgot the microphones. What else do you think, Tyler? Well, that's part of it. Yeah, that's definitely going to be part of it. Thanks. That's definitely part of it. Satan is always looking for a way to separate us, to be a wedge, right? To get away from our people, to get us away from Christ, to get us away from Scripture. Anything to get us away from God, right, is what he's trying to do. And so when he says that their judgment from long ago is not idle and their destruction is not asleep, means that God's not forgotten this. He's not going to let it go. In verse 4, in fact, he goes, well, if God didn't spare the angels when they sinned, what do you think He's going to do to these people? Their destruction is not asleep. It's waiting. It's wide awake. So He's personified destruction, right? He's given it a personality, and it's not asleep. It's awake, it's watching, and it's going to go after these people because they've been set. These false words, these lying words, these are going to separate them from God. Verse 4, for if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to pits of darkness reserved for judgment, if He didn't spare the ancient world but preserved Noah, a preacher of righteousness, with 7 others, if He condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to destruction by reducing them to ashes, if He rescued righteous Lot, see what He's doing here? He's just going example after example after example after example. God is dealing with this. Even though it was long ago, did He deal with it? He did. The destruction of these people in the present day, which is no different than our day. Are there people that spread lies about Christ, spread lies about the gospel, spread lies, false doctrine about the church and the purpose of the church? All of that? Yeah. There's instructions waiting for them too. And if we fall into this caste, if we fall into this group, our destruction is going to follow us. So he's encouraging us to not follow this group of people that sound good, but they're not honest. They're not telling you the truth. They're lying to you. They are not going to try to help you in any way. God knows how to, verse 9, he knows how to rescue his people, the godly, from temptation and to keep the unrighteous under punishment until the great day. And I think I was wanting to go a little bit farther down in here. Look at verse 10. This is the description of the people that are moving away from Christ. Did I see a hand up? Daring, self-willed, and they do not what? When they revile angelic majesties, what do they not do? God sends his people, his angels, to serve, right? And how do they respond to those angelic majesties? They don't mean anything to them. They don't tremble. They don't fear them. What is the very first step to understanding God? Having a knowledge of God first begins with what? A fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. They're never going to get the wisdom of God because they have no fear of God. There is no respect, even for his emissaries that he sends. And what was the parable? What's the great parable about they'll respect my son? I'm going to go ahead. They killed all the others, but I'll send my son. They'll respect. They'll say, oh, he's the son. We can't do anything to the son. How did they treat the son? They treated him just like the rest of the prophets, didn't they? They killed him. Some they stoned, some they tore apart by wild beasts, some they crucified. The world, because it's being controlled by Satan, is always going to be fighting God. Anything godly, anything spiritual, they're always going to be fighting it. Verse 11, whereas angels who are greater in might and power do not bring a reviling judgment against them. Even the angels aren't going to bring a judgment where God hasn't brought a judgment, or if it's God's place to bring the judgment. And man isn't even going to be fearful of the angels when the angels won't do that. Remember, we talked before about Michael the archangel. Who did he refuse to rebuke when he was arguing with him over the body of Moses? Satan refused to rebuke Satan. And yet, but look at verse 12. But these, like unreasoning animals, born as creatures of instinct to be captured and killed, reviling where they have no knowledge, will in the destruction of those creatures also be destroyed. God is not going to deal and allow that kind of conduct. Look at verse 13. Suffering wrong as the wages of doing wrong, they count it as a pleasure to revel in the daytime. They are stains and blemishes, reveling in their deceptions as they carouse with you, eyes full of adultery. They never cease from sin, enticing unstable souls. And right here's the problem. Having a heart full of what? Greed. What's our basic flaw as human beings? We're so in love with ourselves that we can only think about what we want and what we need. So really greed is kind of the basic, it drives everything. Our desire for money, power, wealth, whatever it might be. Greed drives that. And what does Scripture tell the Christian, the follower of Christ? We need to what to ourselves? We need to empty ourselves, right? And fill ourselves up with Christ. Is that easy to do that? No, it's not. Because we live in a physical world. Jesus is spiritual. His ways are spiritual. The way he tries to deal with us is spiritual. But we live in a physical world surrounded by physical things. And so we get distracted by physical things. And it's difficult in this world to stay focused on Christ because we live in a physical world. It's just not easy all the time. Look at Hebrews 3. Any comments, any questions over in this? Look at Hebrews 3. Let's go back there. So here's the encouragement from the Hebrew writer, and he has talked a lot about Israel and how they rebelled against God and they tested God. They saw his work for 40 years. He was angry with that generation. They always go astray in their heart. And what's he tell us in verse 12? Be careful, brethren. Be careful. Did your mom ever tell you be careful when you left the house when you were young? Did your dad ever say, careful, son? Be aware. My friend Carl, his dad always used to just say, keep it between the ditches, boys. He knew we were out in the car running around on a Friday night. Keep it between the ditches. He didn't want us to what? Get in a wreck, get hurt. Just be careful. And this is what the writer is saying. Brethren, take care that there not be in any of you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God. But yet, what are we to do? Encourage one another day after day, as long as it is still called today, so that none of you will be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. Sin's sneaky, isn't it? Do we ever find ways to justify our wrong? Well, I did that because, and then we create this reason, and hopefully there's a voice somewhere in your world that says, hold on, stop. Yeah, you're not thinking right here. We need people in our life, right? That's why he says, encourage one another. And then so many times Christians wonder why they struggle in life, why sin captures them when they're never around God, they're never studying, they're never in Bible class, they never come to church. They come once every few months to show up. Hey, I'm still here. Well, what are you doing? How are you serving? How is your life going? We don't know because you're not around and we can't see you and we can't encourage you and we have to chase you down. And one of the first things you hear from a lot of people when, you know what? Nobody called me. Nobody called me. Should we be calling brethren when we miss them? Yeah, we should. But what's the responsibility of the brother that's missing? Don't be missing. Don't do that. And you won't have to complain about, well, nobody's called me. Well, you know what I've always found when the people that say that? Ask them, well, how many people have you called that are missing? Oh, you wouldn't know who's missing because you're not coming around. See, we can't encourage and lift one another up if we don't show up. So we have a responsibility to our brethren to reach out to them, to try to bring them back, to help them. But they have a responsibility too to see God and to allow us to be in their life. But if I just keep pushing everybody back, if I just keep doing this all the time, eventually what's Ian going to do if I just quit talking to Ian and I don't let Ian try to encourage me? What's Ian going to do? What's the natural reaction? You're going to what? You're going to quit. You're going to quit worrying about it. Okay. You don't want to talk to me, don't want to be around me? Okay. Whatever. We can't. Jesus wasn't chasing people around, pinning them down, getting them in the corner of the room so he didn't do that. If you want to follow Christ, if you want to go to heaven, if you want to serve God, if you want to be involved in the kingdom, you have to work. We have to be involved. We have to be aggressive about it. We can't be shy and bashful about our relationship with Christ. We have to live it in a way that causes others to want to be there. So we have to be an encouragement to others. Are there any comments or thoughts about any of this? Okay, let's go to John. We're gonna go to another section here. Let's go to John chapter 12. John chapter 12. Jesus is getting close to the time that he's going to be, in verse 32 of John 12, well, let's take a look at that. But that's where he kind of begins. And if I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men unto myself. Does anybody want to take a shot at what that's talking about? If I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men to myself. What's that referencing? His crucifixion? Yeah, his crucifixion. His death. And through his death, what was Jesus going to accomplish? Bringing us to God, right? His whole goal. Christ had one job. One job. bring us to God. We were separated from God because of our sin. He brought us to God by getting rid of sin, right? His role at the cross, when he said, "It is finished," the last thing he said before he yielded up his spirit. Remember, men didn't kill him. He gave it up. Could they have killed him if he didn't want to die? I mean, when Jesus was resurrected and he's got holes in his body, because he tells Thomas, "Put your finger in the hole, put your hand in the side." I think what was happening was Jesus was alive with gaping wounds in him, and there was no blood in him. He was showing that, I think, this is just my opinion, I think he was showing that life, he's got command of life with or without the flesh. He doesn't need the blood. He doesn't need a heart. He doesn't need the fleshly body to live, and neither do we. But in this life we do. In the next life we're not. But right now we do. Jesus didn't depend on that. He didn't need to be, lived like us in order to show us who he is. So verse 33, he was saying this to indicate the kind of death which he was to die. So he was foretelling this, right? So Jesus in verse 35 says, "For a little while longer the light is among you. Walk while you have the light, so that darkness will not overtake you. He who walks in the darkness does not know where he goes. While you have the light, believe in the light, so that you may become" what? Children of light. Some translations use the word sons of light. Children is a better translation, I think. But it's this idea that when we follow Christ and we follow the light, we're going to stay in the light. But what does it require out of us? If we're going to walk in the light, we're going to leave the world of sin, and we're going to cut sin off, and we're going to now live this life of service unto Christ. What does that require that we do? If I'm going to follow Christ, it means I have to quit following what? The world. I have to leave that. I have to leave all of that behind. I can't worry about what people think of me. I can't worry about what people say about me. Why did Charlie Kirk die? Why did somebody murder him? What do you think? Why did he die? I mean, he wasn't gangbanging anywhere. He wasn't selling drugs. He wasn't, robbing stores. He didn't get killed he died a violent death, but he wasn't living a violent life. What killed Charlie Kirk?
He spoke out against people, transgenderism.
He spoke out against sin.
Yes.
He had the nerve in this world today, in this country, to speak out and say something about sin. Sin that the world is trying to coddle, especially this transgenderism and a lot of the sexual deviations that we have today. The world is trying to justify that and trying to coddle that and say, "Oh, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. It's all those bad, mean people out there that are saying you're wrong." Listen, God condemned any sexual relationship other than between a man and a woman, and then they have to be married. Even the relationship between a man and a woman, if it's natural, is not godly if they're not in a marital relationship. God wants what out of the man and wife? He wants commitment. You commit to each other. You take a stand, you say, "This is where I'm going to be," and you take that stand and you stay there. But is that easy to do in this world? It should be, but it's just not. We have a lot of things that just get in our way and distract us. And we too easily allow the world to pull us away from Christ. Now, let's go down. While you have the light, verse 36. Now, notice this. These things Jesus spoke, and he went away and hid himself from them. But though he had performed so many signs before them, yet what? What's it say in verse 37? They weren't believing. Why weren't they believing? He's performing signs. There's no doubt that this is beyond something that men can do. This has to be something from God. Remember who was it? Who's the guy that put Jesus in his own tomb? What's his name? Joseph of Arimathea. Even he understood. Even he understood that whole situation about struggling. I want to believe in him. I want to believe in him, but it's hard. Why would it be hard for a man of authority like Joseph of Arimathea? Why would it be hard for him to confess Christ? Why would it have been hard for him? Remember, he's the one that he allowed Jesus to take his grave. Why would that have been difficult? Let me ask you this. What happens in a political situation if you go against the main guy in the political party or the main woman in the political party? Do they ever suffer politically because of that? They do. Oh, yeah. Jamie said, you betcha. Yeah, they do. You go against them, you're going to get punished, right? Well, it was difficult for them to follow Jesus because he was not popular. He wasn't saying the things that the Jewish leaders wanted to hear. What would Jesus say? What were some of the things Jesus said to the Jewish leadership? What did he call them? Snakes, hypocrites, all kinds of names. Was not very nice to them at all. Why wasn't he nice to them? They should have known better. They did know better. They knew. There was no denying Jesus. There was no way in the world with an honest heart watching this man that you could believe that this man was bad for the nation. He was bad for the nation from a political standpoint. That's what they believed, right? So they began to speak against him. They just refused to accept that this could be the Christ. Really? This guy? Look at him. He hangs around with these kind of people that are vile, they're reprobates, they're sinners. He runs around with them. Have you seen who he hangs out with? Fishermen? These guys are not educated. Can anything good come out of... They just didn't want to give him a chance, did they? And it's interesting that the people that listened to Jesus were what people? Who were the ones that followed Jesus the quickest? The uneducated, the poor, the weak. Those were the ones that seemed to come to Jesus quicker. And why was that? Why is it so hard to follow Jesus if you're wealthy and you're smart versus not wealthy, not commanding a high IQ maybe, not being a leader of your community? You know, you're a plumber or you're an HVAC guy. Nothing wrong with either one of those things. But they're not considered high-level work. It's humble. That's really what it comes down to. It comes down to a heart matter, doesn't it? It comes down to being able to accept, he's God, I'm not. I need to listen to him. And I need to put away all the things that can get in my way. All the snares, the sins that so easily beset us. We have to learn how to get rid of those things. So the reason that they had a problem, even though he was doing signs, they were not believing him. And this was going to fulfill the word. God had prophesied this. Lord, who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? In Isaiah. He said this was going to happen. Look at verse 40. Here's the quote. He has blinded their eyes. He has hardened their heart, so that they would not see with their eyes, and they would not perceive with their heart, and be converted, and I heal them. What happens to people when their heart's converted? What does God do to them? Takes away their sin. He heals them, right? He heals them. What was the problem with when Jonah went to the city of Nineveh? What was Jonah convinced God would do if he went and preached to the Ninevites? He's going to be merciful to them. He'll probably forgive them. I want them wiped out. I want them dead. I want them all dead. I don't want any of them living. Level the whole place. They've been nothing but a thorn in the side of our people for hundreds of years. Wipe them out. When Jesus was traveling and a city said, leave, we don't want you here, go away. What did James and John want to do? Kill them all. Wipe them all out. You know what? That's what I want to do a lot of times. I understand that. I would have been right there with James and John. I'd have been the third guy going, yeah, come on, Lord, let's go get them. We can do that. You've given us that kind of power before. Give us the power to go wipe these. Do you want us to call down fire and brimstone on them? They didn't understand what God's about. God isn't about trying to destroy. Jesus didn't come. In fact, let's look at verse 48. Let's go ahead and jump to that. He rejects me and does not receive my words, has one who judges him. The word that I speak in the last day will judge him. And look at verse 47, the verse right above that. What does he say about the reason that he come? I did not come to judge the world, but to what? Save it. It's not about judging. I didn't come to judge the world. I came to save the world. So it's like he's got blinders on. Jesus got blinders on. He's right here, right? He's got to get to the cross. That's my joke. That's my goal. That's my job. My responsibility is to do the will of the Father. And my job is to get to the cross. And that's what he did. And that's what he focused on. He wasn't here to destroy us. He was here to save us. But there are people that will get in your way. There were people that would get... In fact, what did he even call Peter when Peter was trying to get Jesus to do something that was not what God asked him to do? Get behind me. Get behind me. You're acting like Satan with the way that you're talking. And we can do that sometimes if we're not careful. If we're not really careful, we can do that. So people don't obey Christ many times because they love the praises of men. They don't want to disappoint their grandparents. They don't want to disappoint their husband or their wife or their kids or whatever. They don't want to go against the grain. If I go this direction, I think Jesse mentioned it the other day, if I accept this truth that you're telling me, then that means my grandma and grandpa are what? Oh, they're lost. I can't do it then. Because if I make this decision and go this direction, then that's going to condemn them. No, you going over here has nothing to do with condemning them. Right? That'd be like if I went this way because I knew where I was going. I knew how to get to Lexington, Kentucky. And somebody else takes off and doesn't follow me. They don't know where they're going, but they don't follow me. Do you think they're going to end up in Lexington? Probably not. Right? You got to know where you're going, and you have to have a desire to go there, and you have to be willing to take some help along the way sometimes. As hard as that is for us to accept, that we need help on a regular basis. And where do you get the help? Right here. God's people, God's word. That's where we get the help. But many times we shoot ourselves in the foot because we create these reasons to be upset and to be mad and to be angry, and then everything gets split up and people aren't talking anymore. Really? Are we going to do that when we got heaven to try to worry about? See, we can't get caught up. That's Satan. That's just Satan creating wedges, creating anything to divide God's people and get them away from Christ. First, he's got to divide you, and then once he's got you separated, then he can go after you because you're by yourself, right? Because isn't that what predators do to a flock? You know, get them all excited, get them all fired up, get them running, and then pretty soon one of them will wander off, take a wrong direction, and that's when they get them. We can do the same thing to ourselves. We can allow sin to get in and stir everything up, and then there's a few people that go shooting off in a wild direction, and many times we lose them then. We can't do that. We have to understand that we cannot continue to live in a way where we put anything, even popularity, even wanting to be close to other people. I don't want to offend them. I don't want to upset somebody, so I'm not going to do what I know I need to do because it's going to upset them. They're not going to be the ones standing in your judgment seat. They're not going to be there. When we stand before Christ, we're going to be standing there all by ourselves. It's not going to be okay, bring the Lenore City Church of Christ up. Let's make our judgments on them. It's not how it's going to go. Doug's going to be standing there all by himself. It's going to be him and the Lord. Cindy's not going to be with him. She's not going to be able to stand up and say, I'll take his place. Don't cast him away. No, that was Jesus' place. Jesus took that spot. Cindy can't die for Doug. She can't give Doug heaven with her life. She can't do it. I can't do it. Only Jesus can do it. Let's not trade that. Let's not trade that. Let's not behave in a way like a bunch of politicians where we're fighting over something that doesn't matter. What we're dealing with here is the only thing that matters in this life, and that's getting to heaven, right? That's the only thing that matters. Go to any comments, questions? 2 Thessalonians 2. Let's finish up here.
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that when you were talking earlier about the downtrodden, the sick, and you have the Israelite, the Jew, the Hebrew, understood that God's blessings were material, and blessing them with children, blessing them with land, blessing them with a good business. It was all physical blessings that showed that you were in the right with God, and that's how they perceived what the upcoming kingdom was going to be. It's going to be God blessing the nation of Israel just like he had before. And the common person, the blind person, the person who was destitute, the person who was cheating people on taxes, those people had no hope. They had nothing to live for. They were in their place, and a lot of them said, even the disciples asked Christ, hey, that person who's blind over there, was it the parents' fault or his fault? He sinned, right? Because he's been punished. So these ideas that the hope was for the people who felt like there was no hope, and Jesus came and showed them there where the kingdom is. The people who are blessed are the poor, blessed are the downtrodden, blessed are the peacemakers. All these people are the ones that are blessed. And the Israelites, the reason why they didn't hear him, and the Hebrews didn't hear Jesus, is because that was not what they had seen and practiced for 2,000 years, because they lived a life of where God blesses you. And the biggest example of is that wonderful young ruler who Jesus loved when he came up to him. If you remember, he said Jesus loved the young man because he had done all the commandments, he had done everything, he had been blessed beyond measure, he was rich. And Jesus said the same thing he said to that man that he said to his other disciples, come follow me. And the rich young ruler could have been just as blessed as the apostles, but he chose what he thought God's blessings were, and he went off disappointed.
Right.
And Jesus didn't say he loved them after that, but he said before he loved them, then I bet he said, I wish he'd come and followed me. But it's the young ruler really where I feel like we're almost in that situation again here. The United States has been so blessed, Western society has been so blessed and so enriched that we are so lazy. We can get something for nothing. We figure out every other way how to cheat everything and get free stuff, and we've forgotten that we've been so blessed, like the Israelites were blessed, that we don't see any reason for God. There's no reason for God because we have everything we need. We have so much idle time, we fill it up with all this garbage. But I just look at the young ruler and I just think that's me. Right. I'm walking away because I've been so blessed by God in this wonderful nation, and now I think it's time for us to go back to the downtrodden and the people and show where the real love was, in which Jesus. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the big picture is those Israelites. The reason they didn't hear him is, yes, it's political, but it's really because they didn't look at the kingdom as being the same thing. It wasn't a spiritual thing for them; it was a physical thing, and that's what Jesus wasn't giving them.
Well, there's a lot there. That's good. Yeah, when you talk about who Jesus was going to, who his audience was, do you think that's one of the things that irritated the leaders? That he was going to the poor. That's where he was taking the gospel, and that offended them. Because, well, what about us? We're the smart ones over here. We're the ones with the long robes. We're the ones, saying the long prayers. What about us? And Jesus was not looking at them. Jamie?
The Jewish view, the Jewish view was, if you're poor, you must be a big sinner. That was some of their problem. You were poor because you deserved to be poor. You weren't doing right.
Right.
And we obviously, since we were so wealthy and all this, we must be more righteous. We
kind of act the same way.
Yeah,
don't
unfortunately,
we?
yeah.
We kind of act the same way for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. For whatever reason that might be that we come up with. I thought I saw some other hands. Anybody else? Okay, look down here at 2 Thessalonians 2. I want to start reading up at, well, here's another one. We could go way back. Verse 8, let's go look at 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 8. Then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming. That is, the one whose coming is in accordance with the activity of Satan, with all powers and signs and false wonders, with all the deception of wickedness for those who perish because they did not receive the love of the truth so as to be saved. For this reason, God will send upon them a deluding influence so that they will believe what is false, in order that they all may be judged who did not believe the truth, but did what? What's the real problem that God's got with sin? It's not that we sin, because we all sin. We all fall short of the glory of God. That obviously did not keep God away from us. God still pursues us. What's the problem that God's got here? Go ahead, Tyler. It's the pleasure. Taking pleasure in unrighteousness. Have you ever seen anybody hurt somebody and then laugh about it? Steal from somebody and laugh about getting away with it? That's not the kind of heart that God's wanting us to have. That's not a heart of Jesus. That's a heart, but it's not the heart of God, is it? Where you're just trying, where you take pleasure in pain, you take pleasure in hurting people, you take pleasure in taking things that don't belong to you. This is exactly what God is wanting us to get away from. We are going to sin. We're going to stumble. We're going to make mistakes. But when we start enjoying that and we want to be involved in those ungodly things, that's where God's going to just let us go. He's just going to let you go. If that's what you want to pursue, God's going to allow you to pursue that. Let's continue reading 2 Thessalonians 2. God will send them the deluding influence so that they will believe what is false, in order that they may be judged because they took pleasure in wickedness. But we should always, what should be the attitude of the Christian? Being thankful. Rick said a little bit ago, just being humble. That's the heart God's looking for. God can work with a heart that's humble and thankful and wants to be led and wants to be taught and wants to learn and wants to grow and wants to get better. That's why it's so exciting when you see, somebody like Alex this morning preached a lesson. Did a great job. A couple years ago, that wasn't Alex. It wasn't where he was at. But he made a decision. He made a decision, and he even talked about it. He made a decision. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it all the way. Right? That's what God's looking for. That's what a wife is looking for in a husband that's committed to them, not to anybody else, committed to them. There is nobody else. That's what God's looking for. Us to be committed to Christ. There's nobody else. There isn't anything else. Nothing gets in our way. We don't take a pleasure in doing ungodly things. Because Jesus suffered so that I can be saved. I can't take that salvation then. I can't take that freedom that He's given me and use it to go out here and abuse others with it and to take advantage of other people and to do things that are just ungodly. We cannot have pleasure in unrighteousness. Perfect timing. That was my last point. Any questions? Any thoughts? Go ahead.
I was just going to make one comment. You asked about what God would want, and someone mentioned take pleasure in the sin. I think it's interesting, once again, with Lot's wife, when Lot and his wife and his daughters were fleeing, and she looked back. In the Hebrew, she looked back, and that means she longed for it. She looked at the city.
She missed it.
Missed that pleasure.
Right.
So she was punished for that.
That's a good point. I remember I was at a church one time, and when you turned around, if you were up front, you turned around and looked at the clock, it said, under the clock, it said, remember Lot's wife. Every time I did not want to look back at that clock anymore after that. Thank you.